It's another episode of Better Learning Podcast. My name's Kevin Stoller, and we're talking about the movie Radio today. And I am joined with Carla Cummins, my co-host. Carla, what's going on?
Oh, it's a great day. It's a great cold day in Arizona. That never happens.
Yeah, cold for us is what, 60s, low 60s, right?
I think it's like 40s, but I'll take 60s.
Well,
That's
it was
fine.
probably 40s when we woke up, and
It
then
just happened.
and then joining us is Meredith Watassek. Did I do it right? Did I
You
pronounce it
did.
right?
A
Good job.
plus.
Yes. Awesome. And Meredith's joining us. She is a educational planner for Stantec in Houston, Texas area. Meredith, before we get going talking about radio, do you want to just give a little bit of what's your background? And I definitely want to hear why you picked the movie Radio.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kevin and Carla. Happy to be joining you all today. Why did I pick radio? Gosh, my why behind picking radio probably has to do with my path of how I got here. I am not an architect by trade. I don't pretend to be one. Spent 24 years in the education world, and feel like really made an impact on a lot of students that people might otherwise not think could have been super successful. So there's a little lead in to why I picked radio. The majority of my time was spent either in a dance studio, training up a lot of students, or a career and technical education program, which is also training up a lot of students that people forget about. So.
Yeah. All right, that's going to be an interesting combo then. I'm sure it's going to come up here as we talk about this movie. I think I saw this like when it originally came out, but I knew of it. If anything, if I hadn't seen it, but watching it again, I'm like,
it's a good movie.
This is a good movie. There's a lot of things happening here that are still relevant today. But Carla, had you seen this movie before?
I hadn't, honestly. So when I was looking it up this weekend and rented it and did all that stuff in order to watch it, but I had not.
You rented
seen
it?
I'm sure you didn't rent it on a Blockbuster video, which is when it came out.
I did not. No, that was I don't even have anything to play that, but it was on, I'm sure it was like, I don't know, Amazon or, I don't know where it was.
Yeah, I did
Prime.
I did it through Prime too. I rented it and I had none of my kids wanted to sit down and watch it with me other than Tessa, my 8-year-old. And I'm like, you have to take notes. And she wrote all these handwritten notes about the movie, watching it with me. It's awesome.
Do you have them?
I should have brought it with me if I would have done a good job preparing, but
Well, you think about it, right? Her perspective and what she takes away from the story would be vastly different as, grown-ups, and what we're looking for to take away from the story. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That's a follow-up conversation.
Well, let's set it up a little bit. This movie came out in 2003, but it's a true story, and which I love when it's a true story, and I love how at the end where they actually show like the clips of the real people. But what's the first takeaway? Like, what would you guys describe? What was most impactful for you guys?
Carla, you want me to jump in?
Oh, you go.
I'll jump in.
You do it.
I think most impactful is the change that happened in the community as a whole. And man, it takes a lot of grit, number one, to make change. And number two, it takes a lot of confidence and patience on the part of children and adults to go through some of the things that radio had to go through. And then, of course, the coach had to go through some of those things as well. And so I think you've got to put yourself out there to be willing to go through struggles to get to the light at the end of the tunnel.
I just think it was a profound story about love. Like just the way that we truly love people, and you just never know who you're going to fall in front of. And it's just going to be like, you just absolutely love them and you just take them, and you're going to, no matter what, fight a good fight for them. So that's what I took away. Community is great. Definitely there. But I just thought it was just truly and deeply about love.
Yeah, I thought it was it was one of those movies where, um, it felt like, the football team should have like won the championship or something like
I
that.
agree.
And they finished like 6-6, and so it was like a great way to be like, hey, this is not a football movie, even though like they try to make that a big part. But I always just think back to Coach Jones, who's played by Ed Harris. They kept asking him like, why are you doing this, why are you doing this? And he never had a great answer. He's like, I don't know, it was just kind of like, he's just like, it just feels like the right thing to do. And yeah, to me, it was just like a kind of like a wholesome movie of like people being good and kind.
And wouldn't it be nice if that was
Like
the
Yeah.
world we lived in
would that be
today?
nice? Yeah, yeah, yep, yep,
Mhm.
exactly. Yep. So yeah, so Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Radio, who that's not his real name, but he doesn't speak, so they give him the nickname Radio because he plays with he likes to listen to radios and take them apart. I don't even know how to describe it. Like even in the movie, they ask the mom of what do you think's wrong with him, and she's like, "There's never been an explanation. He's just a little slower." How would we even like?
And I would
What's the description? I'd love to hear Meredith coming from the education background.
so I would challenge the movie and I would challenge the question. Why is something wrong with him?
Yeah,
Why is that the question? I think that that is the essence of really the purpose behind the movie of why as a society do we describe people that are different as having something wrong with them when in fact we all probably have lots of things wrong with us in the eyes of
Oh, we do.
someone else, right? And so, yep, he operated differently. His mind thought differently. But Carla, to your point, his mind was very pure and very authentic, and he
Hmm.
didn't understand wrong. Um,
Hmm.
and wouldn't that be a nice world to live in? So maybe we have it all wrong. Maybe we should all wish to be more like that, and not
Well,
so
I
impacted.
yeah, and that was one of the quotes that I had written down was that coach's statement, right? Sorry, I'm just jumping to this one,
yeah,
but he was talking about the way that radio, was teaching everyone else just solely based on the way that he treated others, and and I'll have to Google it, but like, what would it look like if we all treated each other the way that radio treats us? um, and just the knowledge, like he didn't understand malice. He didn't understand, people are just sometimes innately mean, and that they're going to pick on the person who doesn't fall into a social norm. um, and he just thought everyone came with a pure heart just like he did. So yeah, I agree.
yeah.
It's an interesting when you think about the year it was made, 2003, and you think about it was really made of the 70s. The story was really
Yeah. In the
occurred
I think it was 1976. Yeah.
occurred in the 70s, and then you think about where we are today. And I guarantee you there is still situations where children in schools, either in schools or not in schools now because of the opportunities that they have to withdraw or make other choices about where they get their education. I guarantee you there are still children that are in that same boat.
Yeah, we hear stories of it. But did they ever determine how old he was? I know it was 11th grade is what he got to, but like, when he was found by the coach, how old was he? Did anyone Google?
I think he's 23.
At
And
that point, he was
He was
23.
at that
Okay.
point he was
okay.
23. So
Yeah.
23 with if you think about the limited experiences and you think about my goodness, he went through 23 years of his life waiting for someone other than his mother to show him the same compassion. Eh, And
Or to see him,
yeah,
right?
to
Hmm.
even recognize that he was a member of the community.
Mhm.
So I have you stumped.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
Why and
such
how?
like
It's not such an education movie until it really is, right?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's really not an education
Mm-mm.
movie. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, obviously, a lot of like scenes within schools, and that brings kind of the social dynamics together in there. But um, But it's more about society of like, how do we do this? Because I mean, you know, like Meredith, the way you phrase of like, why do we have to put a label on
Being different.
anyone of being different? And um,
Well, and I would challenge this.
yeah,
So why do we even put a label on where education happens?
yeah,
Because, right, I mean, right now we talk about education happening in a facility or a school building, but is that really where education starts and stops? And I contend that it's not, and it's probably what what makes um, kind of me working at an architect firm so different. And the question is always, is it really only about the doors of the school? Is
right,
it really
Yeah.
only about the inside? And then I think back to getting to record earlier this year with you all, and how do we become radically student centered? And um, you know, Kevin wearing your shirt proudly from the perspective of what does student centered mean? And if you think about radio and you think about what happened, and it's easy to talk about him, but what about all the other students? And how were they impacted? And how did it really become student centered? Um, and I contend, Carla, to your point, it was the demonstration of how to be an actual human being that demonstrates love to all
Hmm.
from the coach
Correct.
that probably had the most profound impact on the football kids, the daughter, the cheerleaders,
yeah,
the barbershop.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, the barbershop was like the best part. I'm like, what is this? This is a school board meeting.
It is. It was an unofficial school board
I,
meeting.
That was so weird. Like, why? Yeah,
and
actually,
then
that
he
was one of
just
the things that my daughter. She's like, why is he going there for a cup of coffee? I'm like, don't they have coffee shops? Like, can he get coffee somewhere else?
Starbucks
no.
didn't exist
I
in the
mean,
70s.
They had
I
the
mean,
diner.
he even critiqued that coffee too. He was just like,
Yeah,
"It's not good today. I'm going to leave
yeah,
early. I'm
yeah.
out."
No,
And so much
No.
did he mean by that. It was not about the coffee
Oh
at
yeah.
that point in time.
yeah,
Hmm.
no,
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of underlying conversations there too. There was also his wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like his wife stopping him when he, gosh, it was after the Christmas thing. I don't even remember what it was, but he's sitting in the chair and maybe it was the school board had come back to ask him questions and she was sitting there sewing and he's just like, you know what, maybe I have this all wrong. And she turned around and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, and so the challenge of, I can imagine as an educator, and I'm not an educator, but to see those students and to put the time, energy, and effort into people on a day to day basis, and then to see a daughter who's begging for your attention at home, right? That is real life, regardless of what your career is or your job is. You have all of those things that take your attention away. And to be able to recognize, like, okay, well, she needs that attention, but the love that she got from radio and the love that she felt from for him was incredibly real. You saw that
Mm-hmm.
when she got the call about the mom dying.
mm,
So I just think, I don't know, it was a good story to me. So I was, it, having not watched it before, I was glad to spend my Sunday doing that, you know? No. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, before we get into some of these award categories that we go through, uh, this is one of the things that I actually kind of struggled with a little bit too, is because taking that like more of that student centered approach, like everyone else kind of got ignored. Like if you really look at it, I mean, the coach like clearly like radio was his priority for
Mm-hmm.
everything. And can you do that for every student in that school? Or, you know, like, is that even a realistic conversation to have? Because I think that's some of the pushback that, as you know, like we're going through this, I would say like really big change in education that's going on right
Mm-hmm.
now, of trying to move away from this where like standardized testing type of approach and trying to make it more about every individual student. How hard is it to do in an environment like this where every kid has their own issues they're dealing with and needs their own attention and their own path? And
Yeah,
that's what I was struggling.
I think that that's such a challenging question from the perspective of, and I'll put on educator hat, um,
Hmm.
from the perspective of how do you give everybody what they need, um, and then I'll offset that with what people expect. And so I'll go to equal versus equitable. Um,
Right.
you know, equal is everybody gets the same amount of time. Equitable is everybody gets what they need. And so, Kevin, to your kind of struggle is, did he forget too much about the other students? And I think, yeah, possibly he might have missed some opportunities, but in the given context, and I do have to say I don't know the time frame, the real life time frame of how long this was. Um,
Right.
the movie sets it up as if it's over a football season, so over a semester. Um, from that perspective, is there value in saying that the students on the football team and the cheerleaders and the XYZ, are they in such a place that they need to learn to fend for themselves, if you will, or to advocate for themselves? And was radio, did he walk by at just the right time where the coach needed to let those athletes step up? And I think my educator brain wrestles with that because we don't really know the whole story. Right? We definitely don't know if coach's redirect of his energy and efforts, what kind of negative impact it may or may not have had on another student. That's not the story that's being told here, if you will. But I do
Yeah.
think that that's a struggle, especially in today's world. And when we talk about a shift in education and shifting away from teacher centered to student centered, it is, how do we help teachers allow students to find ways to exhibit their successes or to exhibit their knowledge or to communicate their needs that are not the norm and not the expected and not the expectation? Because do we all have to take the test and pass the test in the same capacity? Because that's not student centered,
Right.
from that perspective. So I think it's an interesting spin on, in the 70s was something happening that we ignored in education that now we're coming back to. Who knows?
All right.
Mm-mm.
Have any of you had an experience like this?
Like, did we have a radio at school?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Not that I can recall.
Oh, I would say my experience with that was very much because of the years I spent in the classroom, and I worked a lot with special needs students, um, and watching. So I'll give one story without using this young lady's name. Um, she was 22 when she aged out, so she stayed with us the whole time. Nonverbal, wheelchair bound, minimal movement of her right arm, uncontrollable movement of her left arm, enough control of the right arm that she could manipulate a talking box, which means that we could program the talking box with statements, and she could pick buttons to push to make it say what she wanted it to say. So this young lady spent 2 years that I knew her as a freshman and a sophomore, if you will, but it really wasn't her freshman and sophomore year. Um, Age wise, she would have been 17 and 18 at the time. So I watched her spend 2 years coming and going out of one classroom, in one set of doors, out that same set of doors to board her transportation, and never would she make it past the end of the hallway to go into the lunchroom because she couldn't connect with students. It was uncomfortable. And we gave her the opportunity to become the greeter in our school store that my marketing students ran, which was
Oh,
on
that's
the
so
other side of the building. So we had to get her off the hallway all the way down to the other side of the building and train her to talk to people using her talk box. It took us probably 3 months to get her comfortable going down there, and she spent the last 2 years of her education being the daily greeter 3 days a week, and would have us program laughing statements like, ha ha ha, your hair doesn't look good today. The reality was that she couldn't communicate what was going on in her brain. However,
Mm.
she could communicate in such a way that we knew you wanted to make people laugh, and you just spent, by the time she got down there, 19 years with nobody helping you figure out how you do that. So that's been
Yes.
no, it's been more than that, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years. I still get to see her mom, and she's
Oh,
doing well,
cool.
not living at home. She's living in a group facility where she gets to engage and interact with other people. So I think watching that is probably what makes radio such a special story to me, having lived it, watching it with students. So
Yeah.
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 No,
Mm.
but imagine being your student, right? Trapped in
trapped in
herself,
a body.
but having this, yeah, having this sense of humor. And I mean, how great that it's, look at
Yeah,
your hair is not great
yeah.
today, right? Like the personality that probably is underneath it there that's completely misunderstood, which is, I think, radio too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you look at, he gets arrested for passing out his gifts from the community to
Right.
Mm.
the doorsteps of people. He gets, when his mom dies, and he trashes the house because he doesn't know how to regulate his emotions or show them. It suddenly becomes a barrier to have him at the school. And so, yeah, I mean, even as normal, like, I'm going to put quotes because I don't think I'm very normal, but we have those same problems too. So,
We definitely
yeah.
do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking of a few experiences, like even as a kid. Um, and I don't know, like, again, this is every district does it a little different, but kind of the integration of having special needs integration, like how much benefit there is for everyone for that to do. But I don't know how how much that happens versus kind of pulling out special needs into different
Mm-hmm.
situations. But I remember like 1 year, and I don't know. I honestly I don't know what happened to the kid, but 1 year he had lunch with us every day at table, and he was. I mean, as a kid, you don't know what's going
Sure.
on, so it's a lot of questions. But now, as an adult, like he was pretty severely autistic, but he had every like sports stat
Mm.
memorized. So it was like our challenge every day was to ask him questions to see if there was anything that he didn't know the answer to, and that exposure, be able to learn how to interact, like that was invaluable. Like looking back of like I wish, like I don't know what happened, like after that 1 year, but I just look, I'm like, that would have been a really good experience for really everyone.
Right.
Um, yeah, if that would have continued. Um,
And isn't it
yeah,
interesting that you don't find much research on the impact it has on the greater community, the greater student population,
right,
Student.
right? The research is always on how does being in a least restrictive environment positively impact student that has needs, right? Student that has
right,
additional needs or different needs. But we fail to realize the impact it has on the kids sitting next to them and helping them become a more compassionate citizen.
right,
Or, gosh,
right.
how do I even talk to somebody that looks or is different than me? How
Mm-hmm.
is that
Yeah.
preparing me?
All right. This is way bigger than just a school conversation, but
It is.
let's go through some of these categories because it is. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is just a really good societal type of
Mm,
discussion that to have would be like, why, like would we be better as a society if we were interacting more each other? I mean, again, at a high level, to me, this is one of our, like, if you look at like why we have a lot of issues in this country right now, um, everyone's in their own silo.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is getting their own media source from their own social media, and it's so rare that you actually see things that you disagree with or things that are not what you proactively were seeking, so that it just keeps reiterating. You don't see other people in other situations. it, it's probably our biggest problem as a
Yeah.
Well,
society
I
right
would agree
now.
with you. I mean, if you think about social media, I mean, and of course the
Mhm.
big C word, COVID, that sent us all home and put us in our silos. And then our students, our children, you pick and choose what you hear and see. I mean, you can press the move button or swipe right, swipe left, whatever you want to call it. I can get to exactly what I want to hear that is only in agreement with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
I started out by saying I'm in my own world.
Hey,
I don't know if anyone
But
realized that.
in your
But
own world, everyone agrees with you, right? I mean, there's no,
absolutely. Come on now.
like, and I'm not saying you, like, all of
right,
No.
us are
right.
that way.
Yeah.
It's like whether we're intentional or not about it, it's fed to us over and over again to show us things that we like and we resonate with, and it's hard, like. I'm glad there's a lot of research. There's a lot of focus on this issue in
Hmm.
particular, and
It's interesting to
because
think
I,
about when you really ponder the damage that that could do, right? I mean, are we moving backwards from an educational perspective um, because we are failing to teach children and adults alike, in my opinion, how to appropriately discuss conflict or address conflict. At the end of the day, it boils down to we just don't think the same, we don't feel the same. You can put any label on it, but
yeah,
but are we missing the boat on teaching people how to appropriately address differences of opinion?
I
yeah,
mean,
it's at the core of
I won't bring up the nasty P word, but right, you see it all the time in everything we do.
yeah.
So, in the conversations that
Mm-hmm.
we have. Well, so we do award categories. I think. Did you get the document that were
I
sent?
got the
So,
document.
Kevin,
Yeah. All right. Have
yeah,
you?
yeah. Did you read them? Where do you want to start? I mean, I like the John Keating Award. Um, but do you know the reference? So Robin Williams, Dead Poet Society. So an outstanding teacher, mentor, or character in the movie that makes them memorable. Are they realistic? Are they not? And then could they exist in a real school setting? I mean, obviously, right? It's a true story, so the answer is yes.
Well, it
They
Yes.
definitely
can
can
exist.
exist. I might throw you for a
Mm-hmm.
loop though. I think
Oh my goodness,
Yes.
Meredith, all day
I
today.
think the gut reaction, right, is you pick coach, but do you really pick coach? So I'm gonna go a different route for you
Yeah.
of
Okay.
teacher, can they exist? And I'm gonna go back to the wife. I'll tell you my why. Um, I think she played what can be viewed as a very minimal role, but her role was so impactful, not only to her husband, but to her daughter.
Mhm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think demonstration of um, compassion and was going to ask some critical questions of her husband when she needed to, um, but also giving the support that needed to happen when it needed to happen. And if you really think about it, when I walk out of the coffee shop willing to put my entire job on the line and my family on the line and my life savings, everything that they were willing to put on the line, I think she modeled what it is like to be a teacher from the perspective of I'm going to understand what my belief system is and I'm going to stand for my belief system. I think that was a little harder for coach because he had to work within the realm of the school board and making people happy, whereas she did not. And so she had values, she stood on them. And so I would really say that I think she was one of the strongest teachers. Um, And to your question, can they really exist in society? I think it is very hard for educators in today's world, in a traditional classroom, in a traditional school, to have their values and have their personal beliefs be something that they stand on without question. I think that we have
Yeah.
given too much power to people to say, I don't like it, so they need to do something different. And I'm not an advocate for go tell me your political views and go tell me your religious views in a public education. I'm not I'm not an advocate for that, but I do think that is it right to let parents yell at teachers? Would that would would wife
Right.
get to stand up to somebody and say, you know what? I don't have to take this. I think that we're in a very challenging time in education for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, and you start seeing a little bit that I think has like escalated a lot, but just like the school board,
Mhm.
or was he a school board member, or
He
was he like
was.
an attorney representing the school board? I couldn't quite understand what his role was.
I felt like he
Uh,
was just like the head
I
of the
think he was
school
the
board,
president
and
of the
he
school
was
board.
gonna, and he's
okay.
like, I'm gonna take this back to the school board, and we'll let you know
Yeah.
what has been decided. And he's like, I don't care what you decide.
No,
Like,
I'm out.
you can take it back to who you want. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the one
oh, wait
that,
a
I
second,
mean,
though. Wait. Are you talking about? You're not talking about the dad. You're talking about the guy who would sit in the
no,
principal's
I'm
office,
talking
right?
about the one that came into the principal's office,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
asking more
School board
question and
member.
trying to like protect the, like asking more of the
Yeah.
liability questions of like, yeah, like we don't like, can we even allow him to be walking the hallways? Like what we don't know what he's going to do. Um,
I I
yeah,
think he was a school board member.
okay.
He
So
was.
from that perspective, I would say the unrealistic is, I mean, Coach went off on
Yeah.
him, like I don't know what would happen if a teacher had that type of interaction with a school board member. Uh, I honestly don't know what would happen, and I would think that doesn't happen very often where they have arguments like that. That's probably really rare. Maybe it is true in a smaller town like that there would be those types of interactions. But that to me, I'm like, man, he'd probably get fired if he did that.
I think we're in such a climate these days that if a teacher approached a school board member with that kind of behavior and attitude, that it's highly likely that you're going to have some redirection, whatever that might look like.
Have you ever wondered how a simple change in your classroom can revolutionize learning? At K 12, we believe the physical space is key. When we partnered with Gary Community Schools in Indiana, something incredible happened. Their classrooms were outdated and uninspiring. Using our radically student centered approach, we reimagined their spaces. The transformation was nothing short of amazing. Teachers saw immediate results, students came back from winter break excited, more engaged, collaboration increased, and overall performance improved. One student even shared, "We have new furniture, it's like Christmas all over again." On the first day back, local media came in to cover the story, capturing the joy and excitement of students discovering their new learning environments. See how we can transform your school today. Visit kay-twelve.com to learn more about our innovative approach. K-12, because every student deserves an inspiring place to learn. Visit kay-twelve.com today.
All right. Well, should we move on to some of these other categories here? That uh, so there is one of like the cliques of like the iconic stereotypes that definitely in this
They
movie. I mean,
existed.
which one stood out for you? I mean, there was definitely kind of like the jocks and the ones who like felt like they were the ones that kind of ruled everything. They were the ones that were picking on radio to begin with and felt like they were
Mm-hmm.
kind of above everything else. What other ones?
I feel like that's really honestly the only one that I saw in it. I mean, you also, too, though, you have the police policing the town and not, I mean, he's not homeless. He's not doing anything terrible, but they sort of, it was the same. The mom said it
Yeah.
herself. She's worried about, what's going to happen one day when he's roaming around and it just takes one wrong person. Those are the only two I can think of.
I think the um, because in the movie it was the men, right? The school board. I think that unfortunately, I think that they played the part of being the people in control, not only of the school, but of the community. And I do think in small town America that that still exists. I mean, if you think about moving into a new town or a new area, it's definitely very stereotypical still of, ooh, wait, you're an outsider. You know,
Mm.
the typical outsider, do you fit in? Do you not fit in? Perspective. So I think the jocks,
Oh my hell, that's shown.
Mm.
That's shown just in the fact that they meet at the end of the game in the dang barber shop.
again,
Like, give me a break.
again,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one I'd be really curious of, like, is that like, it does seem like a lot of this was very real, and I'm sure some things were dramatized, but that was such an odd one to me. But I would just super curious about it. Like, is that true? Like, did the head
you
coach
would really think
go?
it was
Were
a
all the guys
diner.
hanging out at the
Yeah.
barber shop? Like,
I mean,
yeah,
you would
because they
think.
had the diner. They had the diner
Mhm.
scenes in there too. So maybe they just needed somewhere else,
Well, I do think the
some other.
interesting
Well,
thing
though,
about the barber shop is you can guarantee that a barber shop is going to probably be all male. And
Correct.
so,
Yeah.
in the given
well,
time and in the given situation where the school was run by all men,
men.
it makes sense, right?
Well, and that's why I said to like look at. I mean, you're pointing out the obvious, right? Like their meeting place was the barber shop, and that's where the conversations are happening. You look at the banker guy who was, I don't know what he was. If he was a donor of the school, he didn't sit on the school board, I
Mm-mm.
didn't think, but he just was a squeaky wheel in terms of a higher figure in the community, being that he was the head of the bank in this small town. But that's where they go to gossip. So that's where they're having the conversations, and
Yeah.
that's where things are being
Yeah.
conveyed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, though, when we're talking about it, sorry, we're on clicks, but the John King Award, what about the principal? Like, we didn't talk about her.
Mm.
I mean, there's something dynamic about her to give a teacher the autonomy to do what she was doing, but two, to be able to recognize, like, okay, this kid's in the office, he's doing announcements. It's like meeting him where he is at his level, but watching him develop and grow in ways that are, I mean, so great and encouraging and is somewhat comical, right? You have the little lady behind him announcing what it is, and he's like, macaroni and cheese, yeah, macaroni and cheese. So, I mean, there's also
Yeah,
her
she's
because she
good.
had to,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, Carla, we've talked about this on other ones, on other movies, that a lot of times that administrator is kind of usually like the bad one. It's
This one
usually,
she wasn't.
yeah. I mean, she was so supportive,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think she
yeah, like she was
represented
willing.
an educator at heart.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
Yeah.
administrators are oftentimes in movies portrayed as the business person, right?
Right.
Or the political
Yep.
person that got there. I
Hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
she demonstrated what a true educator at heart is.
Yeah. All right, next one, class clown. Was there a character that stole the show, may not have played the major role, but they get a lot of attention or provided some comic relief? I struggled with this one because in a lot of ways radio
Was
provides
the
the
comic
comic
relief.
relief. Yeah, in there, to your point of like doing the announcements, and yeah, there were a bunch of scenes where, I mean, he his performance really like was the make or break
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
of the movie.
I didn't feel like there was
Yeah.
a, a class clown per se. I
Oh,
think that, the jocks that want to play the tricks on people, play the tricks on radio. And I like that they didn't give too much weight to that in the movie. They didn't make it about that. I would imagine in real life they probably were the class clowns.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think I always look at this category as just someone who did something significant, right? And stole, but I would challenge and I would say maybe it was the jock, because what was the basketball player? His dad was the banker.
Hmm.
I'm terrible with names. I didn't write it down. But in the end it was that radio had left him the radio when he was suspended from the games, and it was there and he couldn't write, so he wrote it in his own way. And he went over to radio in the locker room, and radio was like, Coach was real mad. He was just like, he was real mad. Thanks, radio. But that game, he walked out and he told his dad. His dad was like, he's a problem. And he said, is he actually the problem, or is it you?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, a kid to recognize, like, hey, like he was such a jerk face, right? And for his kid to recognize it, and sometimes again it's hard to be able to, as an adolescent or a child, talk to someone, whether or not it's a parent or a superior, and just be like, this is
it.
radio is not the problem. Like, this kid is not the problem. The problem is you and your inability to see the bigger picture and the grace that he brings into the equation. And so, I mean, I vote for him. It's not a funny class clown, but I vote for him.
I mean, he probably is. Yeah. I mean, they try to play the trick on him, but it was like, it's really mean. Yeah. Of having him go into the women's locker room. And
well, they locked him in the shed and
multiple things.
That was horrible. It's like actually that was probably like the worst of the movie. Was like, you kind of knew he was in the shed, but the fact that they like taped him up, like, that was horrible. Like that goes beyond class clown stuff. That is like,
yeah.
But indicative of the 70s. I mean, when you think about it, probably late 80s is when we did away with hazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so very indicative.
Maybe even later. Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like in high school we hazed the freshmen for sure.
Oh, there's stories of,
Yeah.
all the freshmen in the band having to shave their whole head. That's hazing. And that was definitely in the late 80s, early 90s.
All right. What was there like a big? I
daughter.
really want a new name for this homecoming scene one. Oh, for the daughter, we get her in somewhere. Yeah, because she is just like such a good example. But this category, like the homecoming scene of like, is there like an iconic moment, like whether it's the sporting event, or like was there like one moment where like that just captured the most impact from the movie? Oh,
do you? I'm like, I think as they were getting on the bus to go to the game, and he told radio, hey, hang back, like, people don't understand you yet, but they will, right? And so, I mean, that would be mine that I vote for. What are you, Meredith?
I was dead on with you. Like, watching radio, sit there and listen on the radio until they got back. That was it for me. That was the homecoming scene that summed it all up.
Mm-hmm.
People are trying to make progress.
And play in the rain.
But we're not there. Yeah. Kevin, what was yours?
I think the one that pops out for me is it was actually probably not like a major scene in it, but to me was like, it was when the coach confronts the kid, the star player, and basically says like, I'm like, you're not playing tomorrow, and how it was all wrapped around how radio didn't sell him out. Like, he assumed that radio had sold him out, and he's like, no. It's like, he didn't. And that was like kind of, to me, like the turning point of like where he realized like, I mean, coach even told radio, he's like, you're a better man than I am. Like, you're not gonna tell me who did this. And that was kind of that turning point moment where, even that kid kind of came around. He's like, wow, like, I've been picking on somebody who's actually standing up for me.
But that goes back to the conversation
Kevin,
in the barbershop of
Did I pick on people? Yeah. I don't know. I hope I didn't, but I don't like.
Or were you the one that got picked on?
I know I've had
Yeah.
moments where I've been the one picked on, but if I look at it, I'm like, man, I really hope I like, when you're an adult and you look back and you're like, man, I hope I was nice to kid. But those are moments when it's really nice that I don't have a good memory, um, because I don't,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know, like you don't know the perspective of another kid that goes home and what they see.
I'm like, I was picked on in middle school. Oh, you wouldn't have expected that, did you, Kevin?
Mhm. Oh.
I mean, sixth grade, I remember it, and that was the last time. But yeah, I mean, you go into middle school and it sucks. But I don't think I ever picked on people though, not as an adult
Not as an
or not
adult.
as a kid. I mean, as an adult, I look back and I'm like, did I not? Right? And I don't think that there was a time that I did. But also, I thought I was a really great kid. My mom's like, you were not a great kid, Carla. Well,
We
so we
lost him
have
for a minute.
the one liner.
Mhm.
Yeah, we did. We have the next category would be the one liner. So, what one liner dialogues stood the test of time? Yeah, I just have the same one. I just keep going. I think it's the
The
only
coffee
one
was
other than
terrible.
he had wanted two. He wanted both, right? The coffee. No, it was like when he was in that last meeting and he walked in and he resigned. He was like, I think
Hmm.
that what we're failing to see is that we're not teaching radio. Radio is teaching us. Like we should be learning from
Right.
him. And golly, I can't type, but like whatever it was that he said is just like basically like he's teaching us more than we're learning more from him than we will ever teach him. And I think that that's the most profound thing, and that's when it was like that mic drop, like I'm going to resign, I'm going to focus here, I'm no longer going to be the head coach. And then it was like, oh golly, Banker, look at what you're doing now.
Yeah.
I don't remember names either, Meredith, don't worry.
I'm sure he just went by Banker. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I think
too. I think so too.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a great one. If we went realistic or ridiculous, anything that, from our experience working in schools or seeing that we're just like that would never happen.
I think now it would never happen.
I mean, probably, right? Like
Like I
almost all of it, like,
the
right?
entire
There's
thing.
no way. Yeah.
I I agree. I think in this day and age, number one, I don't think there would be a situation where a child is that
Yeah,
put out
Oh, I think we lost
I
her.
from the
lost her.
environment. I don't think in this day and age that it's realistic. I think we're past a lot of it. Um, but I do think it was very realistic in the time.
All right, so this is I agree, like, I think it would be really hard to pull off right now, but I'm a sports fan, and I watch, like, a lot of, like, if I just think, like, college football, there's always, like, there's college game day that's on Saturday mornings, and it is like clockwork. Every Saturday, they do a story in there that is some, like, heartwarming story like this, where they do show like an athlete or a coach or somebody from like a personal perspective, like connecting, and and that was part of me. I'm like I could totally see like those things do happen. Um, Probably more often than we realize, and they just don't get the attention.
You like the substitute, Kevin. So if there were a recast of a main role or roles, who would it be?
Um, I was gonna actually challenge the main role,
Cuba Gooding Jr.?
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Shut the front door.
But actually seeing like the real person after, like, man, like, okay, dead on. But in the
Oh, yeah,
movie, I'm
agree.
like, I think there's a lot of people that can play this role really, really well. And I think, again, being a sports fan, like to see the dichotomy of him in this role, and then also seeing him in the role in Jerry Maguire, where he's like the star athlete. Um, I felt like there wasn't a disconnect enough. Like he wasn't. good enough to like make me think that's not Cuba Gooding Jr. Is that really mean of me to say?
Oh,
No, no, I thought he did so good though. I even like in the scene where he was dancing with the mom. So she was like, he had gotten the radio for Christmas. They'd come back from that Christmas thing and he was dancing with her. And I was like, he did an amazing job playing the character of radio. Like I couldn't imagine, you know, I thought he did great, but
Yeah.
maybe. Maybe. I think the
I
coach was
thought
the
he did
perfect
great.
one. The
I
principal,
was going to say,
Meredith.
I thought he did a great job, but I tend to agree with you, Kevin, that it was hard to, you still knew he was acting.
Yeah, I don't know who I don't know who I would replace him with, but I think they probably could have replaced someone and it still would have been it would have been a good movie. Um, but yeah, I think all the other ones. I think the daughter. I had to look her up because I'm like she looks so familiar. Um, did you? Did anyone else feel like the daughter was look familiar?
Mm-hmm.
She was in. She was one of the characters in Grey's Anatomy, and I'm like, oh, that's what I know her from. But I thought
She
she did a
was.
great. I thought she did a great job of playing that balance of like being a really good person, but still kind of being feeling like hurt that her dad just didn't want to or just didn't make time
Mm-hmm.
for her. Yeah, and then I think you probably could have put a bunch of people in as like the banker role as like the mean like town guy in the town that didn't like what was going on.
There's so many people who could have been in that one.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, where are they now? I wonder, did either of you Google and see if he's still living?
I
You
did.
did, Stoller.
I
What was
did.
it?
Meredith, did you?
I did not.
Okay. No, he actually passed away recently. Um, yeah, I think both of them, the coach and he had passed away. But he was like he
He,
was put into like the Hall of Fame, and actually, what was it in the movie or did I see it later? There was a clip where they actually brought him into the broadcast booth and interviewed him. Was that in the movie? Was that at the end of the movie, or did I find that on
I
YouTube?
think, I think that was at the end of the movie. They played
Okay,
a, they played a,
okay,
they put some information up and played a clip. Yeah, he died in
okay.
2019, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, he still continued being there and in the community. It was yeah, it was pretty cool to see. Yeah. All right, where do you think the daughter is now?
I think
This
she's a
was in
teacher.
'76, so this is 50 years later. You think
Mm. She's in a home for sure.
Yeah, she's like 68 to 70 now.
she would have been a teacher?
I wonder what she went on to do, but I would imagine that she would have gone on to be a teacher or something.
I would have expected a teacher out of her. I have no idea what she
Teacher. All
really
right.
did, but did you research it?
No, I didn't. No, I would guess. How about that the star athlete? What do you think? Do
Oh,
you think he
definitely a car salesman for sure.
car like is the he's got the car dealership in town?
Oh, wow. Okay, car dealership. There you go. I I would have put him in a banker that had to follow in daddy's footsteps.
That could be. Yeah.
But think
Mm.
about what a banker
Yeah.
is today.
Well, yeah. All right. Would you recommend it? What did you give this on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you say for this movie?
Carly, you go first. I picked it to start with. So
So I love movies like this. And no, Meredith, I watched two this weekend because we did an earlier podcast, and I love the fact that they were both based on true stories. So I mean, I would go a 9. I think, yeah, just base story alone. Like if you're really reviewing it movie wise, like whatever, it's an old movie, right? But I think 9 based on the story. I mean, I cried. Don't tell anyone. Got a little teary eyed there.
I'd give it a solid 7. Like a
oh, wow.
good movie. All right, so I'm really big on IMDb. Do you guys go to IMDb a lot? Like, um, it
Yeah.
basically it has like movie ratings, but it also is like where all the cast and everything. Like you can see like all the characters and who's been in what. Um, and they rated it at a 6.9 out of 10, and usually anything like at a 7 and above is usually something that I would want to watch. I'd be like, okay, if it's below a 7, it's usually not very good, and there's ones that get down to like 3 or 4, and you're like, okay, that's a terrible movie. But I would probably give it a 7. It's like a really good movie because it's really hard for anything to get like over a 9 on IMDb. Like really good movies get over an 8.
I'm like, what is Rotten Tomatoes? Like, I feel like that's a better litmus test of that.
Yeah.
IMDb might be a tough audience.
It is a tough audience. It's all just users, so it's no like critics. This is just people rating it. All right,
yeah,
Meredith, where would you put it?
I would put it at an 8. I'll be honest with you. I used to use it in my classroom when I taught sports and entertainment marketing.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
all right. Now I'm like so curious. What else did you teach in that class?
Oh gosh, what else did I teach, or what other movies did we use?
Like, did you do other movies that you go through too?
Yeah, it depended on the season. It depended. It was a 1 semester class, so sometimes I changed it up from semester to semester. But there's a movie with The Rock in it. There's a couple movies, and it's of course Rocky, which is not my favorite movie at all. Have never watched all the series from beginning to end. Doesn't fit my mantra. So why would I use that movie in teaching from that perspective? I think it's because it's teaching a bigger picture, right? And I think I typically would play radio when I felt like students were reaching a point that there was a disconnect between, oh, we're new and we have to be nice to everybody, and they're kind of feeling their way out. And it's now I see all the clicks in the classroom and I see those things happening. It was a good reminder for them to come back to reality. So
very cool. Well, awesome. Yeah. Well, good movie. I'm glad you recommended that one. Fun talking about it. Meredith, what's going on in real world for you? What's the latest on or what's things on your plate right now?
Yeah. So real world, I think, gosh, we've got a lot of great projects going on, but I will give you a bigger picture than just building projects in the state of Texas on K-12. Getting to work on some projects in Canada, education projects, getting to work on some K-12 and some higher ed. And so this is what I would say about that. There is always going to be something that grass is greener on the other side, but man, there is a lot of opportunity to stop and reflect and go, we're really in a good place, and things are making great headway and great progress. So I would say that the experience of working on multiple projects in multiple countries helps remind us that we need to celebrate some things everywhere we are. And then there's always something to be learned from others. So getting ready to kick off CTE month. And so not sure if y'all are familiar with all of that. That's a national thing. So in February, we'll celebrate all the kiddos that are in career and technical education programs and in workforce programs at junior colleges and colleges. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us for that. To the listeners, if you're not a subscriber, hit subscribe wherever you are listening or watching this. And feel free to rate, review, provide comments. What did we get wrong? What are the things that you liked or disliked about this movie too? And betterlearningpodcast.com is our hub for everything. So if you'd like to be a guest, if you have a movie suggestion, if you have a topic suggestion, we really do rely on our audience to bring a lot of ideas that we review in our production meetings. So we appreciate all the feedback that you do through that. Meredith, great seeing you again. And Carla, thanks for sharing your insights here.
Thanks for having me.
Any final word?
Yeah,
all right.
Great to be here.
All right. Thank you. The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.